Hi, I'm Andy Schmuckler. I find the Trump phenomenon very interesting, uh, but I think we should focus maybe lessen attention on Trump. I mean, we basically already know what we need to know about Donald Trump, and I think we know that what the courts are doing is what's essential right now. Uh, it's interesting to follow the trials. I'm somewhat obsessed with all that stuff. But I think that we need to put more energy into looking at the Republican base. Uh, we'll, I think we're going to be able to handle the Trump problem between the election and the criminal proceedings. Uh, I don't think he's going to prevail in the upcoming showdowns. But Trump was always a symptom and not just a causative factor. I mean, if we go back to 2015, we have Trump going into the political arena, and a lot of people I saw didn't take him at all seriously, like Lawrence O'Donnell, who I generally respect quite a bit, really didn't take him at all seriously. And then the Republican base responded to him. Now, here's a guy who is showing us pretty much who he was. And if you were to look for various describers of who he showed himself to be, and then you, let's say, were to ask a bright group of people to list what are the qualities that should be avoided in an American president, I think the list of characteristics would be pretty much the same. I mean, he was a bully, he was a liar, he was a cheat, he brought out the worst in people. He was obviously entirely selfish. It was all about him. I mean, who would ever think that you could entrust the powers of the presidency to a person who had those qualities? Yet in 2015, the Republican base made him the important figure that he is. About 40% of the voters in the Republican primaries chose this guy. He wasn't like Richard Nixon, pretending to be pious. I mean, 2 Corinthians, walk into a bar. Anyway, he was nothing pious about him. He was who he was. I mean, he lies all the time, but in a sense, he shows you who he is. And in a crowded field, that 40% meant getting the nomination. And then I made a serious mistake. And I'm not a braggart, but I'm pretty good at some of this stuff. A long track record. But boy, I keep on overestimating the regular conservative type people that I was so fond of back in the 90s when I had hundreds of hours of talk radio conversations with the conservatives of the Shenandoah Valley. I felt sure in that if the Republicans nominated Trump because of his 40%, which was still alarming, that the other 60% would mostly stay away from him because he's the opposite of what they believed in. I was wrong. The percentages who went over, there was very little attrition from the Republicans world that I could see. They were willing to go with Trump. And he won. I mean, he wouldn't have won. I feel pretty sure that if James Comey had not made this stupid decision that he made to go public with what he did when he did, that Trump would have lost. But even that it would have been close indicates that there was stuff going on, that Trump was the creature of the times. He never would have risen to that place in 1988. Well, the Republican base stick with him, and people like McCarthy have to swallow if they want to get ahead, which is all he cared about. He had to go down and kiss the ring of the guy he had just finished excoriating on the House floor when he felt like, of course, he could afford to speak the truth here. And then he finds out the Republican base are sticking with Trump. And they're actually telling the Republicans, if we have to choose between you and you, the Republican Party, and Donald Trump, we're going with Trump. So the problem is in the Republican base. It is the Republican base that has made Trump so powerful over the rest of the Republican Party. Not only was he the nominee, but he could weaponize them. If he told them, end this guy's political career, like Sanford in South Carolina, anybody who went against him, the base would punish and kick out of power. Liz Cheney, she chose to honor her oath of office. Trump says, kill her off politically. She loses her leadership position among the House Republicans, goes from number 3 to persona non grata. And then the Wyoming Republicans kick her out. So the Republican base is the force that makes Trump powerful. It is the force that chose Trump. And whatever it is that's in that base needs to be dealt with. Something happened between the time it was a decent political party, let's just go back to Gerald Ford, the Republican Party of that era, to becoming the Republican Party of Donald Trump. I mean, that kind of transformation, it's pretty dire. We need to look at the face of this thing and expose it. And then work to see how the good people who got dragged into this dark and twisted place can return to being at least as constructive as they and their ancestors have been historically. There has been respectability in the conservative world that's not there now. There are imperfections everywhere, of course, but over the majority of American history, this part of America that exists, that from the Shenandoah Valley to the fields of Iowa, which Trump has carried twice, there has been historically a positive political force in balance, or at least a whole lot more positive than what we see now. I think in the case of Iowa, for example, I think I know that political culture. I think that I'm on safe ground to say that in generations past, that area of the country had a constructive impact on the path the country took. It hasn't lately. How do we reach those people who have made the journey into that dark direction? How did they get pulled over into that dark direction? What are the implications of that for how they might be pulled back? The part of America that wants to defend American democracy is not paying enough attention to the problem in the Republican base. We will not be a healthy America so long as there are tens of millions of people who have been occupying a space of political consciousness, envisionment, sense of reality that led them to support someone like Donald Trump and to support obvious big lies and to be willing to overthrow the constitutional order that has been the foundation of so many of the blessings so many have been able to enjoy in the United States of America. So we need to look at how our fellow countrymen can be brought back to the better angels of their nature. They're still, those angels are there. I see it where I live in how they are as neighbors, a lot of them, how they are as trustworthy people to do business with, and in the basic decent human character they show in human relationships. Not all of them, any of this, but good people. Enough of them that if we could bring them back, so that in their politics, the spirit they bring to the rest of their lives animated them. That would help resolve the crisis in America right now, where there is too much power behind a force of fascism. And we don't know yet how this is going to play out. But one thing I think we do know, if the problem is in the Republican base, we're dealing with consciousness, which doesn't change overnight. This is going to have to be a years-long task. I don't know how it's to be accomplished, but a lot of attention is warranted here. Thank you.